He was laid to rest next to his wife, Hannah. Albert served his country in the K-58 Pioneer Infantry, World War I. He was a member of World War I Barracks, Oscar Jacobson Post at Little Sauk. He was also an active member of Long Bridge Lutheran Church. Albert and Hannah had 3 children and 12 grandchildren. Further note, Albert, as a matter of course, began his morning with 1 shot of whiskey, and secondly, he had a shotgunner rifle stationed above the entry between his living room and the kitchen. Mohall Centenarian, one of Trondheim's greatest emigration. There is one woman near Mohall to whom, if she were able to make the trip back to Norway this summer, great attention would be paid because of her having rounded out a full century of her life. Few people here knew that they had a centenarian in their midst, but as one of her country's earliest emigrants to the Middle West, she would be given a great welcome in the little country province near Trondheim. 100 years ago next Wednesday, on May 21st, 1830, there was born in the little hamlet of Maraker near Trondheim, Norway, a little child, Johanna Petersen, known now in Mohall as the mother of Peter and Hemming Halvorsen. That she would ever leave that barren, rocky country, which we think of as being pretty close to the midnight sun, after spending a whole half-century there, and crossing the Atlantic, live still another half-century in this new land of greater opportunity, was far from the expectations of the parents or neighbors of this little girl. But the ruggedness of the country requires strong, active minds, so after she and her husband, Halvor Besson, to whom she had been married on December 3, 1848, had struggled against adverse conditions for some 30 years, they followed the advice of their grown sons, Peter and Hemming, who, like many other young men in the region, had sought better times in America. For the young people, that was the natural thing in the making of this great country, but not many parents past the half-century mark as they were courageous enough to break the ties of the homeland and follow them. After a long, uncomfortable ocean trip, contrasting sharply with the one so many of their countrymen are making back to the homeland on great ocean liners this summer for a mighty celebration at Trondheim, with little money and a sick grandchild, so that Mrs. Besson, her 2 daughters, and the child were detained for 3 weeks before being permitted to enter. The child had contracted some disease on board ship, as was not uncommon, and by the time they were given leave to come on, they had not a nickel left, so that all the food they had on their long trip to Osakis, Minnesota, was given by strangers, kindly enough to inquire their needs. The father had been allowed to come in and join his sons at once, so the 3 women and child came on under more unfavorable conditions by far than they had anticipated, and she often said that she did not know how they got there. Osakis, Minnesota was their choice of location, because most of the immigrants from Maraker had settled there. One daughter, Mrs. Marie Anderson, still lives at Osakis. In 1890, they moved by wagon from Osakis over into Roberts County, South Dakota, homesteading near Sisseton and remaining there for 10 years. The family of one sister still remains there, their names being Fred, Bernt, and John Ellingson of Winnoas, South Dakota. On December 3, 1898, when Mrs. Besson was busy kneading an immense supply of flatbread for the holiday season, a great crowd of friends and neighbors arrived for a merrymaking in celebration of their golden wedding. She always remembered the purse of gold they left as a wedding gift to them. In 1902, Hemming Halvorsen came up here to Cut Bank Township, and the parents spent about 3 years with John Halvorsen at Osakis again. The Bessons rejoined the sons here about 25 years ago and made their home with Hemming Halvorsen again. Mr. Besson died on February 29, 1908, and is buried out in the country cemetery near the homestead. In 1922, Mrs. Besson fell over a pipe in the yard and injured her hip, so she has not been able to walk alone since. Until that time, there was never a more active, industrious woman, and the children feel she would still be busily moving about but for that accident. She is in perfect health and contented as ever, but her mind has become noticeably less active with the enforced idleness of her body. She and the Halvorsens are members of the Lutheran Brethren Church of Mohall, and her life surely proves the justification of her faith. In all, Mrs. Besson had 10 children, and 2 daughters remained in Norway and Sweden. Nothing is known of their families, but since they were the eldest, it is likely that there are great-great-grandchildren over there. Besides families of the 2 sons, Peter and Hemming here, John Halverson at Fairview, Alberta, Canada has a large family. Also sister, Mrs. Anderson at Osakis. So with the families of the others who have died before the mother, the list of grandchildren in this country reached 47, and the great-grandchildren to total of 79. Mrs. Besson died on August 30th of 1930. She was laid to rest next to her husband. Design rationale. The arms are a synthesis of Albert E. Anderson's regimental arms. The field of blue is for the infantry. The broken chevron commemorates the piercing of the German line between Sions and Reims, which are represented by the silver and golden fleur-de-lis taken from the coat of arms of these cities respectively. In the base of the shield is displayed the arms of his father's birthplace, metal pad. The St. Andrew's cross denotes his Christian faith and is a cant of the surname Anderson. The choice of gold for the cross has been taken from the cross on the arms of Nord-Trøndelag, Norway, as a reminder of Albert's maternal family, Halverson's place of origin. The crest is a garb representing the history of farming in the family, and the Luther rose representing his religious denomination. The motto is in Norwegian, as a second reflection on Albert's maternal origin as well as his initial spoken language prior to his early education. The motto conveys the seasons of Albert's life. Reynard Anderson. Reynard J. Anderson, 56, passed away June 27, 1981, at the Veterans Hospital in Fargo, North Dakota. Reynard was born August 1, 1924, in Osakis, Minnesota, to Albert and Hannah Flicht Anderson. On January 25, 1947, he was united in marriage to Eleanor Ferris in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Reynard was a member of the Redeemer Lutheran Church, where he was a trustee. He was also a member of the Osakis VFW Post. He was a resident of the Osakis area until entering the military during World War II, when he served in the Navy for 3 years. He was a Minneapolis resident for a brief time, and for the past 34 years has farmed in Osakis Township. Surviving are 4 children: Mrs. Donald Jean Treverdick, Alexandria; Mrs. William Judy Spear, Osakis; Bradley, Alexander, and Brian of Osakis. He is also survived by his wife Eleanor and 2 sisters, Mrs. Kenneth Melba Aberly and Mrs. Gordon Marlis Peterson, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and 6 grandchildren. Funeral services were held Wednesday, July 1st, 1981 at 2 p.m. from the Redeemer Lutheran Church, Osakis, with Reverend Marlon Harris officiating. Burial was in Longbridge Cemetery, Little Sauk Township, Todd County, Minnesota. Pallbearers were James Ellis, Nathan Anderson, Earl Stevens, Gustav Burninghouse, Harold Arvin, and Norval Breckbiel, with arrangements by the Stephen Stein Funeral Home in Long Prairie, Minnesota. Eleanor Anderson, 67, Osakis. Eleanor M. Anderson, 67, Osakis, died Sunday, February 19, 1995, at the Mission Hospital in Mission, Texas, where she was wintering. Eleanor Marie Ferris was born July 25, 1927, in Alexandria to Harvey and Susie Chapman Ferris. On January 25, 1947, Eleanor married Reynard J. Anderson in Hennepin County, Minnesota. While they lived in Minneapolis, Eleanor worked at Northrop King. Then they moved to rural Long Prairie and did farming, and later moved to various farms near Osakis. After Reynard's death in 1981, Eleanor sold their farm and moved to her home at 211 West Nokomis in Osakis. Eleanor was a member of the Redeemer Lutheran Church and the Ladies' Aid. She also was a member of the Osakis VFW Auxiliary. She had many interests and hobbies. She enjoyed doing crafts of all kinds. She was an excellent cook who enjoyed baking and canning. She also was an avid reader. Survivors include her children Jean and Don Tverdick of Alexandria, Judy and Bill Spear of Wadena, Brad and Donna Anderson of Alexandria, Brian and Paula Anderson of Long Prairie, and 8 grandchildren. She was preceded in death by her parents, husband Raynord, and one brother, James Ferris. Funeral services were held February 23rd at the Redeemer Lutheran Church in Osakis, with the Reverend Alan Craig officiating. Music was provided by organist Lila Engfer and soloist Dana Hetland. Interment was at the Long Bridge Lutheran Church Cemetery in Little Sauk Township, Todd County. Honorary casket bearers were members of the Osakis VFW Auxiliary. Active casket bearers were Eric Anderson, B.J. Spear, John Marchwick, Sean and Scott Tverdick, and Mark Ferris. Roy Hetland Funeral Home in Osakis. This photo of Albert loading fertilizer on the wagon for the field was taken about 1925 at his father's farm. Albert and Hannah stayed at Eric's farm for a couple of years before they settled over in Little Sauk Township on the Flicks farm. Bradley James Anderson, married to Donna Jean Deal on October 12, 1974, and had 2 issues. Eric Michael Anderson, born on July 10, 1980, and Matthew Derrick Anderson, born on July 4, 1986. They were both born at Douglas County, Minnesota. Brian John Anderson, married to Arlene Dorothy Anderson on June 20, 1981, and had 1 issue. Jeremy Brian Anderson, born on October 15, 1984, at Douglas County, Minnesota. William Spear and Judy Lynn Spear, née Anderson, married at Sisseton, South Dakota, on July 29, 1971. Jody Lee Spear is the firstborn of Bill and Judy Spear. She was born on May 4, 1973, at Sauk Center, Minnesota. She was married to John Marchwick on July 2, 1994. The children born to Jody and John Marchwick: Whitney Morgan, born on May 14, 1997, and John William, born on June 26, 1999. They were both born at Wadena, Minnesota. William Bradford Spear is the son born to Bill and Judy Spear. He was born on the 5th day of February 1980 at Browerville, Minnesota. He is married to Amanda Nicole Hudson on January 28, 2006 at Wadena, Minnesota. The children born to William and Amanda Spear: Adalia Nicole, born on March 12, 2007, and Adriana Lynn, born on January 15, 2009. They were both born at Alexandria, Minnesota. The family of Jean Marie Tverdick, née Anderson, Douglas County, Minnesota. Back row: Darren Prey, Scott Joseph Tverdick, born July 29, 1974. Julie Sean Michael Tverdick, born on June 7, 1972. Andrea